Hi, everyone. Morning. We're so excited. I'm Sara Rich, and I'm the CEO and founder of Just Right Reader. And we get to live our best lives because we get to host science of reading symposiums all around the country. And part of what we love about that is like we get to talk to researchers all the time. We actually have them like on speed dial, like literally on my cell phone. I text them like, oh my gosh, tell me Heidi Ann Mesmer, tell me Ray Ritzel, like what should we do for our books? But a huge part of that is we actually believe deeply that who they should talk to is you. They should talk to teachers, they should talk to principals, they should talk to district leaders. So we started our Science of Reading symposiums to live that dream of bringing our researchers around and having working groups around the country for districts to come together and do the hard work of like, what are we going to do for kids? What could that look like to make the best decisions for kids around the science of reading? One of the districts that pushed us to have this journey to bring together groups and has been leading the charge, today we're in the Atlanta metro area, in the Atlanta metro around the science of reading, is Fulton County. And we have had the amazing pleasure of working with Cliff Jones, the chief academic officer of Fulton County, in his vision around the science of reading. You probably heard we did a webinar with them on the $100 million that Fulton County spent on the science of reading and the amazing, like literally amazing achievement. I mean, I'm still like, I was principal for 20 years. So I got to tell you, I'm a groupie for this work. Like what Fulton County did in their achievement is amazing. And we felt lucky to be part of that journey with them. So I'm going to pass it to Cliff Jones so that he can welcome a researcher.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. If you're in the room or online, this is an exciting day. When we look at all of the professionals that are gathered together and related to literacy and related to ensuring that all of our students can read at high levels, that's exciting. That gets me up in the morning. I don't even need coffee for that, Sarah. So today, not only as we come together and learn from each other, we get to hear from a national expert to sort of not only give us an inspiration, but give us a challenge, more importantly, to ensure that what we're doing is the right things and for our students. That is what's shown in evidence and research. And so we've got Paul von Hippel today from the University of Texas, Austin. And I'm going to talk about Paul and embarrass him before he gets up here, because Paul is an interesting fellow. He writes more than I talk, which is a lot. And so when you Google Paul, you'll see all of these different research papers, but you'll also see all of these different presentations. And behind all of that is a spirit of advocacy for research, fact, and what works. And so when you look at, I saw two things that stood out. Number one was the idea of summer loss. And there's a couple of articles out there, Paul, that I was reading, and that's a huge piece of our work. But I also saw this other piece, and that's the science of learning and the basis and foundational piece of what we do across all curricula to make sure that kids have what they need and that it can stick. And then he has been recognized. When we say a national expert, we don't mean he just got on a plane with a bag, right? He has 2019 Leo Goodman Award, and that is a national recognition of his excellence. And so today, as I hand it over to Paul, I want to personalize him just a little bit. We were talking last night, and we were talking more about what we do as people, because we are in the people business, right? Whether it's a 2-foot tall person or a 6-foot tall person. And Paul and I connected over what we watch on TV. And Paul likes to watch a little comedy, right? And that personalization allowed me a really insight into how his mind works, but also how he looks at people. So Keenan and Peele, Paul, is one of my favorite comedies as well. And I appreciate the fact that you shared that with us last night, because again, we are in the people business. And with that, I give you our national expert, Paul von Hippel.
Thanks very much, Cliff. That was a great introduction and not embarrassing at all until the end. Let me just get my clicker here. And Cliff was right in identifying what my major interests are. I'm probably most cited for work in statistics, but also in summer learning loss. I've become very skeptical of a lot of the conventional wisdom of summer learning loss from trying to replicate different findings. And I've gotten very interested also in the science of learning and in ways that we can exploit the science of learning to reduce or even prevent summer learning loss. That's what I'm going to talk about today. It's mid-April, so we're starting to think about what kids are going to do over the summer and what we can do to prevent them from forgetting too much and maybe even make some progress. So when I first got involved in the summer learning research, this is what I and everybody else thought summer learning looked like. These are findings published repeatedly in top sociology journals throughout the 1990s and 2000s. And what it describes is the progress of children in Baltimore in the 1980s. And you can see, is there a pointer here? Yeah, there we go. You can see that these kids started out, the blue kids here are in low poverty schools, the red kids are in high poverty schools. And you can see they started out not too far apart. And during first grade, they learned at fairly similar rates. And then an achievement gap opened up during the summer. Second grade, the same thing. In fact, the kids in the high poverty schools learned a little faster and caught up a bit, but then they gave back the ground and then some over the next summer, and so on. So that by the end of 8th grade, about 2/3 of the achievement gap was due to summer learning loss. And this is a depressing finding because it suggests that kind of no matter how well you run the schools, you're going to end up with achievement gaps because of what happens when kids aren't in schools. And there's a whole kind of narrative about where inequality comes from. Does it come from the home or the school that taps into this stuff, which is all, I think, an important conversation to have. But what's important to recognize is that not all summer learning data looks like this. In fact, not a great deal does. In the early childhood longitudinal study, the graph that I showed you before was 838 kids who were tracked through 20 schools in one school district, Baltimore City. This is national data with about 20,000 kids in 1,000 schools more recently, in 2010 through 2012. And you can see that there's really not much summer learning loss. Kids actually gain a little bit in summer learning. This gain kind of goes away if you account for the fact that the tests aren't quite given on the first and last day of the school year. It seems like you've got an achievement gap at the start of kindergarten, unfortunately, between high poverty and low poverty schools. It actually shrinks a little bit during kindergarten. Kids in the high poverty schools help to catch up, but it doesn't grow during the next summer, and doesn't grow during first grade, doesn't grow during the summer after that. Really, it doesn't seem like summer learning loss is as big a problem in these data. And it really depends. It's a very sensitive result. So if you look at the MAP tests, this is a very large study, over 100,000 kids in a diverse group of districts. And the MAP tests, it does appear that, sorry, I'm just having a little trouble with the pointer here. There we go. The achievement gap does grow between kindergarten and 8th grade, but it doesn't grow any faster during the summers than it does during the school year. And the summers really seem to vary. So the summer after kindergarten, there's learning gains. The summer after first grade, there's learning losses. So it's really inconsistent and weird. And then if you use the Renaissance tests, which are another popular vendor tests, it's not quite the same picture here. So here I'm comparing, these are the same national federal results for the ECLSK, but then the MAP tests show these big learning losses in summer, and in Renaissance, they're more muted. Just a little bit of loss, not so much. So it really seems to depend what test you look at, how much summer learning loss you see, and whether gaps grow between high poverty and low poverty schools. So it really seems like summer learning loss is, in a sense, optional or sensitive. And I think it's important to try to understand why. One thing is that it matters how you score the test. It turns out that the way tests were scored in Baltimore in the 1980s is not the way most tests are scored now. In fact, the testing business was in transition then from something called Thurstone scaling to something called IRT scaling. I've written about this online. And it really changed how big the gaps looked between different kids and whether the gaps appeared to grow over time at all, never mind during the summer. And so I think of test scores as being kind of like a funhouse mirror. Most tests will put kids in the same order. You do tend to find that kids in high poverty schools score lower than kids in low poverty schools on almost any test. But how big the gap is and whether it grows over time, that's very sensitive to the test you use. So you can think of it as looking at kids' achievement in a funhouse mirror. You know, the parts are in the right order, but the proportions are a little bit negotiable. It also matters what skills the tests measure. This is really old research, even older than the Baltimore research. So I don't put, all this needs to be replicated with modern data. But the pattern of findings in older summer learning research was that concepts stick. So kids don't forget what a good story is. They don't forget a math concept like what addition fundamentally is, or for older kids, what an integral is, what a derivative is. I've never forgotten that stuff. I just can't do them anymore. If you actually get down to like the procedures of how you calculate a derivative that has trigonometric functions in it or something like that, I'd have to look it up, or I have the computer do it. And so what the pattern of findings was that if you look at math computational procedures, there was summer loss in every study that looked at them. Whereas math concepts, what fundamentally is addition, what is an integral, and so on, that stuff, it was kind of an equal mix of forgetting and remembering. And then spelling is one of those skills. Almost everybody's spelling got worse over the summer vacation, which is, I think, interesting in the present context because spelling, it's related to phonics, right? I mean, it becomes important maybe a little bit later because you're going from sounds and vocabulary to words instead of the reverse. But decoding this needs to be studied directly, but it's probably one of the things that decays most quickly over the summer. So what can we do about that? I'll do some science of learning stuff in just a couple of slides, but just to give you an overview of where we're going, I'm going to advocate a kind of practice that involves spacing skills out. So not cramming, but spacing skills out a little bit every day. And then it also involves mixing up different skills. So I have a blue skill here and a green skill here. And instead of practicing the blue skill to quote mastery, unquote, I advocate practicing a little bit of blue skill, then going to the green skill and going back and forth. And there's a lot of evidence that this kind of practice leads to less loss afterwards, including in a couple of studies during the summer. And we'll talk about summer school a little bit later. So the evidence on I'm sorry. These slides are just a little bit out of the order that I practiced them in. So how do you prevent summer learning loss? The number one most obvious thing you can do is have some kind of summer school. And I'm not going to tell anybody that they shouldn't do summer school. Summer school can be very effective. It's one of the most effective interventions in meta-analyses. But there are some issues with summer school. One issue is, when do you have it? You can have it at the beginning of the summer, or let's say 4 weeks, but then you're still going to have summer learning loss afterwards. Or you can have it at the end of the summer, but then you're going to have summer learning loss running into it, and you're going to have to try to catch kids up in the months before school. So it doesn't really eliminate the problem of summer learning loss, unless you want to have summer school all summer long, which I don't hear a lot of programs doing. There are some other practical skills that you have, practical issues that you run into when you try to run a summer school. It can be highly effective. And if you've got a summer school that's well attended, well funded, and sustainable, I certainly recommend that you continue that. But summer schools are often kind of like boot camps, so we'll just have a 3 or 4 week session here and we'll really try to stuff it into you. And we're going to talk about how cramming is not the most effective study strategy. So it's hard to avoid doing that just for the very nature of what you're trying to accomplish in summer school, but you are going to have some forgetting afterwards. And it's not a solution for everybody. So attendance at summer school is often spotty. Many kids don't attend. The kids who probably need it most are less likely to attend than the kids who don't need it as much. And districts often have trouble in sustaining their investment in summer school. So it's not something that's required, right? You've got to find the money for it somewhere. When ESSER expires, when your ESSER funds expire after 2023, 24, are you going to be able to continue your summer schools? And it's interesting when you think about it that there's no really famous summer school program the way that there are famous charter school chains, for example, KIPP, or famously effective science of reading reforms like in Mississippi. And the reason for that seems to be this lack of sustained focus and this problem that districts have getting kids to attend. So almost all the summer literature, it's very inspiring until you start to read the details and you think, oh, this program's not running anymore, or 40% of kids didn't come to this program. And so, it ends up to be about how great the program would have been if more kids had attended and if it was still running today. So if you can keep a summer school going and the right kids are coming, by all means do that, but it's not a complete solution for everybody. Another thing that is enjoying a little bit of a renaissance right now is year-round school calendars. So year-round school calendars, it's a little bit of a misnomer. They take the usual 180 school days and they redistribute them. So instead of the usual schedule where you've got approximately 9 months off, 9 months on and 3 months off, summer schools or year-round calendars will typically have some more like 9 weeks on and 3 weeks off in alternating fashion, about 4 cycles throughout the school year. So you have a shorter summer vacation, and this is supposed to solve summer learning loss, and it kind of does. But because the total amount of instruction hasn't changed, what you find is that kids are forgetting a little bit during these shorter breaks throughout the year. And I've looked at this actually. If you track kids in year-round schools, you do find that they learn at a more sort of consistent rate throughout the year, but that over a long period, let's say 12 months or 18 months or 24 months, they don't actually learn any more than kids do on a traditional calendar. It's just more evenly distributed. Like it's just like the number of school days, the learning that kids experience is more evenly distributed. So year-round calendars are not a solution. South Carolina, your neighbor, is going big for year-round calendars right now. I'm afraid it's not going to work out for them, and that they'll figure that out in about 3 to 5 years. So I'm not sure we have that kind of time after the pandemic. So I'd recommend not doing that in Georgia or elsewhere. And if there's folks on from Washington State, I know you have, there's a big push for year-round calendars there. It's just not going to have the desired effect. There's also, so what else can you do during the summer? So one of the heartening things is that actually home reading programs can be rather effective. This is a meta-analysis by Jimmy Kim, who we were just talking about last night, and David Quinn. Jimmy Kim's at Harvard, David Quinn's at USC, but was a graduate student at Harvard when they did this research. And what they found was that classroom interventions addressing fluency and decoding, which are 2 of the pillars of science of reading, had an average effect size of about 0.22 standard deviations, and home interventions had an average effect size of about 0.26 standard deviations. So I wouldn't make too much of the difference between them. The point is that it's similar. You can have a similar effect at home with a well-structured intervention as you can with something that's at school, and which is kind of remarkable when you think about it. But we'll talk about why that might be. So now we get to the science of learning part of the presentation. We're going to talk about what kids forget and what they remember. Because summer learning, it's a shame that it's kind of its own separate literature, and there aren't too many cognitive scientists who've done work on summer learning. It's mostly sociologists and folks in ed schools and so on. From a cognitive science point of view, there's nothing really special about summer. It's not like it's the only time we forget things. I mean, how many of you are going to have to struggle, are going to look for your car when this meeting ends, right? And so not remember where you put it. Summer is not special, it's just long. And in fact, I like this picture of this child climbing a dune, because when you if you look at those test score trajectories, it looks like, oh, kids aren't forgetting during the school year, but they are. They're just learning fast. They're learning new material faster than they're forgetting old material. So it's a little bit like climbing up a dune. Every step this kid takes, their foot's slipping a little bit down, but they do ultimately make progress up the dune. Ultimately, if they stop climbing for 3 months, as you do during summer, they would gradually slide down. And that's what you see with summer learning loss. So it's completely normal to forget. This is how our minds work. We're a little different than ChatGPT this way. And we tend to forget, we tend to remember better information that's meaningful to us than that's connected. Disconnected information, fragmented information tends to be forgotten more readily. And that's why these kind of computational procedures, what exactly do you do when you've got a prime number in the denominator, and all these kind of special one-off rules. We've got a million of them, of course, in English spelling, because our language is not particularly transparent, not literally a million. But anything where there's a whole bunch of complicated rules, I before E except after C, and then I don't even remember the rest of it. This is how complicated it is, right? These are the kinds of things that tend to be forgotten more readily. One of the fundamental principles of learning science, and this goes all the way back to Ebbinghaus around 1900, is that we remember what we practice. If we practice more, we remember it longer. So if you practice something twice, you will tend to forget afterwards. But if you practice that same skill 3 times, first of all, you'll know it a little better. You can see the blue line starts a little higher than the green line. Probably should start higher than that. And then it decays more slowly. So you really need to practice. And this is a little bit of a disconnect between the sort of broader cognitive science, science of learning community and the science of reading community. And that's because they're facing different challenges. So in the science of reading community, you're really facing a challenge of people thinking that kids don't need explicit instruction in phonics. And so the science of reading movement is really about explaining that reading is not a natural skill the way that speech and listening are, and that you really do need to structure it and to introduce the letters in a gradual order. All this stuff, which I think one of the later speakers is going to talk about. Whereas in the science of learning community, what they don't say that instruction is unimportant, but what they see happening in schools a lot is that there's just not enough practice. Kids are spending too much time sitting and listening and not enough time practicing their skills. And so there's a lot of emphasis on the importance of practice. And that gets to be really important in science of reading too, especially when you get to trying to develop fluency. So it turns out that the way that you practice matters. One thing is that you remember longer when you space practice out. So if you learned a musical instrument as a child, which it's true what your teacher kept on telling you, that it's really not ideal to practice the day before the lesson for 2 hours. You should practice half an hour a day throughout the week. That really is true. So, and it's a little bit of an illusion, and it's easy for both learners and teachers to fool themselves about this, because if you practice a lot right before a test or a performance, you really do, it does appear that you know the material very well. The problem is it fades very quickly. Whereas if you space the same amount of practice out, if you have 2 practice sessions, but instead of having them all on the day before the test, you space them out. This graph, actually, this line should be a little bit lower. You may actually do a little bit worse on that immediate test, but your knowledge will persist. Your knowledge and skill will persist more and fade more slowly during the later summer. So if you're kind of optimizing for that spring high stakes test, cramming can be effective for that, but you're going to have more summer learning loss if you cram than if you space things out gradually. And this is one of the ways in which the incentives in education are a little bit off. Another thing, and this is, so spacing is a very old effect. It's been known for a long time, and there's been a lot of interest in introducing it into education for a long time. Interleaving is a relatively more recent discovery. It started out in motor learning, sports and such, but it turns out to be very effective in cognitive research as well. And I'm lucky to be collaborating with Veronica Yan, who's one of the world experts on interleaving. And Paulo Carvalho as well at Carnegie Mellon University is also an expert. The two of them together probably have published more on interleaving than anybody else. So interleaving, if you have 2 skills, which I'll represent here by blue boxes and green boxes, if you practice the blue skill twice and then the green skill twice, and these could be different phonics skills, for example, as soon as you stop practicing, then they do start to fade, and they can fade rather quickly. But if you adopt, and this is called blocked practice, but if you adopt an interleave practice strategy where you practice the blue skill and then the green skill and then back to the blue skill and then back to the green skill, it actually turns out that the skills fade more slowly if you do this. It's not apparent on a test right afterwards. And so this can be very misleading to both students and teachers. I'm cutting a little bit against the grain here because if you talk to people who were trained in the Orton-Gillingham method, for example, there's one of the things that they like to do is a triple read, where you keep reading the same text over again to develop fluency, to develop confidence. It probably does develop confidence, but it also sort of cuts against this more recent idea, post Orton-Gillingham, before that kind of approach hardened, that it would be better to actually alternate between a couple of different decodable books. And this is something that has not been studied in the phonics space. It would be great if one of y'all wanted to partner. We could. There's definitely a tradition suggesting that each one of these approaches should be more effective. The science of learning suggests that interleaving different decodable books should be more effective than practicing one decodable book to fluency and then moving on to another one, that you'll have less forgetting and more transfer of knowledge. So here's what I would recommend this summer. I would recommend that you do an assessment at the beginning of this, beginning of the summer or end of the spring, and that make sure that this assessment emphasizes decoding skills. One issue we have in the summer learning literature is that a lot of these tests are black boxes. So, a number comes out, but like, what does it actually mean that your kids know and don't know, and what are they most likely to forget. A lot of these tests don't tell you. Make sure that your test measures decoding specifically. And then if you have a summer school program that a lot of kids are attending, by all means continue that, but make sure that everybody is reading at least a little bit every day over the summer, because that consistent practice, especially if it's spaced or interleaved, especially if it's at their level, and especially if it is engaging texts that provide motivation and interest, and have characters and situations that your students can identify with, they'll be motivated to do it even when nobody's telling them to, and they're more likely to practice a little bit every day. And then assess decoding skills again when summer ends, and see if you had summer learning loss, or if by following this approach, you've actually managed to avoid it or even seen some gains. And that's it. Thank you very much. Would you like the screen on too? I hope I can turn it back on. Okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah.
I loved what you said, right? Like, it was so beautiful and very clear to me of a couple of the most important things we can do for kids this summer is give them decodable books, keep them reading, and space it out as much as we can.
Yeah, that's right. Realistically, unless they're in a summer school program, they're not going to get a whole lot of instruction, but the practice is something they can keep up all summer.
I love it. Yeah. Were there any questions, Terry, that came through online? No. Okay. Anyone in the room? Like, isn't it it's so fun to listen to Paul? Anyone thinking any questions before we move on to our next part?
Touching on what you were talking about as far as decodable, Gordon Gillingham saying reading on 3 times each versus, would you say that the decodable, if you were going to interchange them, would you say that you would want to stay on the same skill set? So you really are still practicing the same skill, it's just presented in a different way. Does that make sense?
I mean, phonics is interesting because it's cumulative, right? So when you move on to the next level, the skills from the previous level are still being practiced. And that's a nice thing about a lot of phonics curricula, which math curricula, for example, don't have. There's a cumulative nature to math, but you can do something with trigonometric functions and then not see them again for months. And when they come back again, kids don't recognize them. So I wouldn't worry too much about skills from the previous level being forgotten, because they're continually reinforced. But if you're at a particular level that's emphasizing certain, like say the letters MT and the short A, I would alternate several texts that emphasize those rather than, yeah. But again, this is something that needs to be evaluated explicitly, because the evidence on interleaving does not come from the phonics arena for the most part.
I'll have to bring you in to study it. Here, pass me the mic. Oh, there's a question. I'm just going to, we should repeat the question, or should I repeat the question? What do you do for students from bilingual homes, and how do we support them if their families aren't literate in English and able to support them in English?
Yeah, this is, I was thinking that you could answer this.
I got it, Paul. I got it. All right. So I see some questions. One thing to note is that we've been listening to Paul and flying him around the country and talking and like thinking about a lot of what he's saying. We actually redid our product based upon what Paul has been talking about with kids practice and how they forget their decoding. And the most important part is to keep them decoding all summer long. We went back and his practice. One thing you have said to me that I have stuck with, that has like ingrained now in my thinking, is that we really need to have that practice, that like they need to learn it, then they forget it, then we need to push it back again. And like that interleaving that I saw, that one slide really has struck me, that we need kids to provide more practice with the same letter sound they're working on, because they're going to forget it, right? So I kind of want to share a little bit about Just Right Reader and why we feel so passionately and so grateful to work with Paul and think about his research as we created our summer take-home boxes. So the first thing I want to just tell you is, like, I'm a groupie. Like, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I feel so passionately that we created a product that's good for kids, good for teachers, and good for families. We started this because after being a principal for 20 years, my own daughter had a hard time learning how to read. And I was like, we can do something better for her. And that was the birth of Just Right Reader. A huge part of our vision was that kids could see themselves in books. We wanted to tell authentic stories. So all of our decodables, dogs, cats, dinosaurs, I mean, who doesn't love them? But the truth is, we wanted our books to feel meaningful and righteous for kids, so we could do something bigger than just teach them to read, but also allow them to see themselves in books. So you'll see authentic stories. One of my favorite is Kayla Skates. It's just this adorable little girl who skates around her neighborhood. That's what kids do. They rollerblade around their neighborhood. No matter where you live in the country, Indiana, Atlanta, where I grew up in small town America outside of Pennsylvania, right? You're just like a kid who goes on your bike and goes around. Another is Chloe the Copycat, this adorable little girl who finds her younger sister super annoying. That's what happens to kids, right? Paul, I heard you say something very powerful in that. You said kids remember more when it's meaningful to them. You said they get that. So, you know, sometimes we do things that we think, oh no, my computer's going to die. It's relaxing. Someone grab out of my purse my my power cord. That'd be bad. That'd be bad. That'd be a bad moment there. All right. So it's meaningful for kids. So we feel really lucky, like the stories of kids' lives, that's what's meaningful to them, right? A kid who skates around, they get that story. A younger sister who's super annoying, they get that. The other thing that we feel passionately about, and like you can feel when we talk about this, is we work with great people like Paul, right? Like we want to talk to researchers. We want to make sure that our product is designed within the science of reading to be what's best for kids. Like as we design our summer product, poor Paul had to talk to us a whole lot, right? What are we doing in our summer product that really is good for kids? And we talked to Heidi Ann, Mesmer, Ray Sal, Julia Lindsay, like all of these poor people. We are making sure that everything we are doing is best for kids. And in fact, because we're a mid-sized company, we're constantly changing. Like we talk to the researcher, we put it into practice right away. In fact, Paul, you said something to me today that we have Terry Hunt here. She lives in Atlanta and she makes all of our videos. And you said kids should read the book, but then go into a different book and then come back and read that book afterwards. So we're going to add that into our videos. Like a huge part is if we can hear the research, instantly put it into practice, we feel passionate, and that is what's best for kids, right? All of our decodables follow a strong phonics progression because if we can learn our letters and our sounds, we do well for kids, right? Done. Heidi Ann Mesmer, this is her point. She talks about like the most important thing that you can do is make sure that we are telling kids, this is the phonics skill you're going to work on within this book. So all of our decodables, the very first page goes through like, here's the phonics skill we're going to work on. You guys, we have an expert and a fabulous person in the room. Terry is here in Atlanta. She films all of our videos. So I'm going to bring Terry up, Terry Hunt, and she can like talk about when she makes the videos, what that QR code is, that question that said, what can we do for families? Terry, will you kind of help us through?
So hello, everyone. My name is Terry Hunt. And when I started doing this work with the videos and started working, I became so excited because I realized, wait, I have been in education for 20 years. And that means there's a real teacher talking to real students, not students hearing a computer making a vowel sound that isn't correct, or not students hearing an AI bot doing the sounds that's not accurate, but a real life teacher who is speaking to their students and saying, repeat after me. Let's do that again. One more time, repeated, right? And so then what they're able to do after that is we say, you'll see this in words like, and all of the words come from the books that they're about to read. They're short, they're quick, they're engaging, And now we're going to have them in Spanish. So now that question is, what do we do? And we're hearing this more and more. When I was in the classroom, when I was working with students, parents used to say, can you come to my house and help my kids with homework? And I used to say, I would love to, but I'm only one me and I have 3 other girls at home, right? But the beautiful thing now is they can click on the back with the QR code. The students can do that, right? The students can teach the parents how to use the camera to do the QR code. And it will take them to a very quick, engaging video that teaches them how to do the skill that is highlighted in the book. Then I walk them through and I literally say, after I get off the video, remember to read, reread, and keep reading to become a stronger, more confident reader. So we're encouraging them to continue to read, continue to practice. And then parents, this is the part that I'm loving. We're hearing more and more as parents are engaging with the videos that those parents who don't know the skill themselves, they don't have to feel insecure by saying to their children, I don't really know. They're watching the videos, then they're able to repeat and say, now you know, now let's read this together. That's exciting. That's really, really exciting. And we're really excited because we're always changing, right? We're always growing, we're always developing, we're always doing new things. And we're even thinking about ways to have other children join the conversation and encourage their peers in those videos to keep reading. Super exciting.
We're so lucky. Terry lives here in Atlanta. So Terry literally makes all of our videos, and every single one of our decodables has a QR code that leads to a video just walking kids through that phonics instruction. Let me tell you how some schools are using it around the country. Some people are creating stations within their classroom. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to spot a station. When you watch Terry's video, you listen to her phonics lesson, and then you read the decodable. Watch the phonics lesson, read the decodable. Families that can read in Spanish, or families that know Spanish because we have these videos in Spanish, are learning to read by watching the Spanish video. Cobb said to me yesterday, they said, Sarah, can you make it Vietnamese? Fabulous. Like, our whole vision is we want to meet districts and kids with exactly what they need. So if you have a district that says we really need Arabic, we really need Vietnamese, like, we would love to engage in that journey together. All right. So when you think about this, we have 2 products to me, and that makes total sense. We're going to have decodable classroom libraries, right? You're going to buy our decodables for your kindergarten library. You're going to put in the kinder books. Fabulous, wonderful, done. The product that we have that no one else has around the country are our take-home decodable packs. And we have been thinking a lot about our take-home decodable packs and talking to Paul as we think about summer, right? This is what kids need for the summer. So, for example, in the room is Cobb. Cobb shares with us their reading data for kids, whether that's iReady, whether that's FMP, whether that's Dibbles, whether that's MAP, whatever that data is for the district, we take it in, we push it into our algorithm. It pushes out for us and tells us exactly the 10 decodables for that child to have independent practice that we want to send out. So we literally, and we're kind of crazy about this, because we even wrap those 10 decodables. Like, this is intentional, right? We want this to feel fun and special and go back to what Paul talks about that meaningfulness for kids. When kids get like something that feels like a present, it feels meaningful, right? Done. Fabulous. Now it feels even more meaningful when it has your name on it. So we literally are so intentional that we put every child's name right there on that take-home decodable pack. On the back of every take-home decodable pack is what we call high five reading. So when you're reading, you color it in for each time you read it. So Paul talked about 3 times. Heidi Ann Mesmer says 4 to 6 times. The answer is we want kids reading and rereading, right? And we're going to take that information now and encourage teachers that what I heard from Paul very clearly is read it once, then read another book, and then come back to it, right? So that's really where you're going to get that practice, that interleaving that Paul talked about. The other thing that there's lots of research around the science of reading is that reading writing connection. So all of our take home decodable books have on the very last page a part where they write. Like that's what we want kids doing. We want them writing. The tiniest bit matters. And then again, remember that QR code? We took feedback from schools. Fulton County said to us, Sarah, can you take that QR code from the back of the book and move it to the front of the book? We think more kids would scan it. And you know what happened? It did. It worked. More kids, by having that on the very front of the take-home decodable packs, they were scanning it more. Front and center, that's what we want. We want Terry's lessons and phonics lessons going into homes and being there in classrooms. So a little bit of what happened, I'm going to go to this one and then we'll come back. I want to walk you through as we think about like, how do we support kids this summer? How do we keep kids reading and continuing over the summer? We created summer packs. Now, I want to be really clear and intentional about this. We actually take the data and we even move kids back the tiniest bit further because we want the summer packs to be easy. We want it to be so kids can practice. Paul talked about this, that the best bang for your buck you get is actually practicing with something that has knowledge base that you've already learned. I heard you say that very clearly. So we took that feedback and our summer packs were like going back, not totally the data exactly where kids are, but a little bit easier. Houston is buying 1 pack for every week of summer school. So they're buying 5 packs, 1 for each week, and then 1 to take home. This goes back to what Paul was talking about, right? Of like that continued practice. It can't just be something that happens in summer school. It's got to continue. Actually, I want to talk about that. We added in last year backpacks, or like actually 2 months ago. The chief of schools in Texas, I know, it's crazy. Cobb, the chief of schools for Fort Bend, he said to me, Sarah, I think you're missing something very important here. I was like, what, Cobb? What are we missing? He's like, Sarah, I want kids taking these decodable packs. I want them reading it on the yard. I want them reading it on the bus. I want them reading it everywhere. It'd be even better if you had a backpack. I was like, okay, Guabana, we'll get a backpack. So we have now backpacks every time you get these summer packs. It's even more powerful though, because some schools say, I don't just want to give kids 1 pack over summer. I want to give them 5 packs. I want to do what Paul talked about of like, keep them reading all summer long. So now because we have the backpack, if you want to send 5 packs home, you can send them now because we've got the backpack. 5 packs go in, last day of school, kisses. You're now in 2nd grade. Here you go. Here's your backpack, right? I want to talk you through our end of year packs. A lot of districts all around the country are saying to us like, listen, I just want to do something for these kids this summer. I want something to go home. So we created our end of year packs. For kindergartners, here are 10 decodable books you can read that are the skills of kindergarten to just keep you alert, like keep that interleaving going, keep kids practicing. And districts all over the country were like, we don't want these just in English. Can you do this in Spanish? So now we have an end of year pack in Spanish for every grade level, pre-K, kinder, 1st and 2nd. So you could also now buy your end of year packs. I'm going to send every kid home with 1 pack in Spanish. I want to talk through something that we call take home packs that Fulton County did last year or this year and last year throughout the year. This is, you send us your data. We then send you for every 2 to 3 weeks of school, a take home pack. Now this is beautiful because based on Paul's research, doing it every 2 to 3 weeks is even more powerful, right? Because you get that practice and you keep practicing it. And then all of a sudden a new pack comes. It's meaningful, it's relevant, it's exciting. And then you try and practice it again. So we have 11 packs to do that. Some people are like, oh my God, we're going to use all our ESSER money and we're going to buy 11 packs this summer. Rock on. We love that. But not every district can do that. That's why we created an end of year pack. And I want to talk about, I forgot something really powerful. When we started doing this with Fulton County, they said to me, Sarah, this feels like a kid's birthday. Like it's like Oprah's like, get a car, everyone gets a car, right? It's like that, like the teacher gets her packs of 22 kids, right? She opens it up on Friday. She's like, okay, I put it out. She puts it on everyone's desk. On Monday, they open it and it just feels like Christmas. It feels special. It feels meaningful. And like, that's that journey for kids is real. Prince William said to us when we started partnering with them, they were like, Sarah, I think there's something even more here. Like, you're giving us these books, but what if you told us who was getting which book? Annie, Robert, and Maria are all getting books for Val teams, right? Here's kids getting bigraphs. So then we can even take these decodables that come into the classroom and start doing small groups throughout. Like, fabulous. That's exactly what we want. We're looking for real-time data for kids, real-time instruction, and giving them decodables that matter to them so they keep practicing. And the answer for us is, like, we want this to feel easy. This should feel so easy when you get our take-home packs. So we made for teachers a quick start guide. Like, here we go. I'm going to be able to get at the box, be able to go right away into my classroom. We have a lesson plan that goes with each one. And the whole lesson plan is built upon letters. Day 4 of letters is all application, right? So here you go. Here's the application that you can do. And then we have also a caregiver guide. When Bakersfield bought us, they were like, Sarah, we really want they did a whole district-wide implementation. They were like, we want this to feel so easy. The best part about that was we made a video for them. We were like, okay, great. We're going to make a video for you that goes through how to use the books and what makes them special. So districts all around the country, some people say we want to get take-home packs. And then some people say, I really just want libraries. Fabulous, wonderful, we'll do a library. Our pre-K books, our pre-emergent, there's so much I could tell you, but the one thing, because I really want Cobb to go and tell their story, is that I want to tell you that we added in a page of practice writing. These are dry erase, because there's tons of research. We want everyone in the classroom to be able to try out that letter formation. Remember that reading, writing connection. Districts around the country were like, Sarah, it's all great, but we really need something for our older kids, our 2nd to 5th graders who are still emerging. So we worked with Heidi, we worked with Ray, and we created high interest chapter decodables. These are nonfiction mystery. They're different. They're a little more exciting for kids, right? They're not the same tiny size that Ray made me make our books. They're bigger, because if you're a 2nd to 5th grader, you deserve something a little bit different. And the background knowledge for these kids, that's what we wanted. We want to build their background knowledge so they're getting a science in their reading. The most important thing, Lizzie, you want to come tell everyone about this. You got to come quick. Cobb's waiting. Lizzie Fortune is from our team, and she covers all of Georgia and a whole bunch of other places, but
Fabulous. Well, hello, everyone, and hello, everyone online. So we have a lot of choices, right, of where we're able to print our books. And we all know that if we were to print it anywhere else, it would be a lot less expensive. But it's very important to us to print here in the US. We actually have a distribution place right around the corner in Gwinnett. And that's important because that money then goes back into the school systems, right? And so it's very important to us also to make sure that it doesn't take months to be able to ship something. This is something that we're able to ship 7 to 10 days. So when you place your order, we're able to make sure that it gets to you in time, because I think we all know, right? We're all educators. We know that the worst thing is when we have planned something and then we're waiting, when is it going to get here? The kids are getting out of school. We need to send this home. How's it going to be? And it's a lot to coordinate. So we need to make sure that you have what you need when you need it. And that's why we print here in the US. Yeah.
the other thing I just want to talk about real quick before we bring Cobb up is that the curriculum alignment. We are a supplement. We're a supplement. We're take-home decodable books for the summer, for their classroom breaks, for throughout the year. We're an extra supplement to keep you going. So we've created alignments. So whatever your curriculum is for the classroom, here you go. This is the data add in these books when you're doing short O. Here are the short O books to add in. Everyone wants Spanish decodables. They will be there at back to school. And a lot of districts, Montgomery County was like, Sarah, when are you going to get me some board books? So we literally are starting to make board books. They want to pass them out at the hospital. Fabulous, wonderful. Like, what a beautiful thing for kids and families. Oh, there's a question. Yeah, families can order it on, they can go to Just Right Reader on our website and just order them for themselves. It's kind of super easy. And schools can go through our team. Oh, the question was if parents and caregivers wanted to buy their own packs for themselves, they could absolutely go onto our website and just buy like 5 packs, whatever they want. They could buy 1 pack, 5 packs, or 11 packs. What I want to say to that though is for districts who think like right now, I want to buy my summer take home packs. We want you to put your orders in early, right? Because we literally are printing for 150,000 kids around the country, but the earlier we know, then we just keep adding up our numbers and make sure we're printing. So let us know if you want some take home packs for your district. So we make sure to put those numbers in. Coming soon, coming soon. She asked us, the question was, are the pre-emergent available in Spanish? They're coming. Spanish is going to be here back to school. The other thing is like today's a symposium. Like we've come back to Atlanta 3 times. We will be back here in September with Lucy Paulson, the co-creator of Letters. And we just believe really passionately in learning, right? And so a huge part of what we've put our business around is coming all around the country and doing symposiums. So if you are a district that says like, I want to bring in some great researchers for us, let us know and we'll reach out to you. And we've done this now. We keep coming back to Atlanta because the best part about this actually is there's a working group here now. Like all of the districts in the Atlanta metro all come together every 3 months to hear what our researcher says. We like make it really easy. So we love doing this. This is powerful. And on that note of the power of learning, this was designed for a couple of ways. It was designed that we get to bring in a researcher, we get to tell our story, but really the real story of success is districts talking to other districts about what they're doing that's powerful, that's palpable, and that moves the needle for kids. So I cannot wait to pass the microphone to Dr. Catherine Molina from Cobb County to tell her story and the story of Cobb County's journey along the science of reading. So Catherine, here you go.
Thank you, Sarah. We are thrilled to be here to get to share the work that we have done in Cobb over the last, I would say a few, but it's not a few. The journey started implementation of fall of 2016. Now, you know, if you work in a district office, that means the work started being planned in 2014. Now, in school world, lots of those people have retired or have a new job, but I only joined the team in July. So I say this to say the work you do has to be sustainable. Sustainability has to be the number one goal of what you're doing. So in my mind, I was thinking of, well, what are kind of your pillars of sustainability? What are you doing to make sure it's sustainable? Well, I think you've got to start with an incredible team. And I have an incredible team. And so you have to start with the right people. And then you have to really think about, does what you're doing align to your mission and your vision? Now, I'm going to tell you in Cobb County, if you walk into a school and walk up to the first adult and say, what's the mission of Cobb County School District? They are going to tell you, it doesn't matter who it is, one team, one goal, student success. That is ingrained in what we do. And it's a school district where all students can succeed. That is ingrained. It's not just a flag statement. It really is what we do. So when you align to your mission and vision, the work, the second part, and I think this is the hard part, is implementation, right? Fidelity of implementation. You have to be sharing the why of what you're doing. Why are you doing this? That's showing the research, showing the data, because I mean, maybe there are some people that are skeptics, and you've got to have that. That's got to be in your back pocket. And the third piece, I think, is really it's being willing to adjust. Being willing to adjust, to change. You're going to see from, maybe in 2016 to now, the world's undergone a few things. If we didn't make changes, this would be completely unsuccessful, right? You've got to change. You have to use data. You there is data in terms of the numbers, and then there's the feedback. Feedback's important. You've got to have a connection to the schools, knowing what they're doing. And all of this sustainability really aligns perfectly with our superintendent's priorities. So our superintendent was in the district before he became the superintendent. And at that time, I was working in a school. These have never changed in 8 years. It's consistent practice. When you think about Cobb is the best place to teach, lead, or learn, that you're simplifying your foundation for teaching and learning to prepare for innovation and using data to make decisions. Well, that aligns with sustainability. I will tell you that our superintendent is incredibly employee-centric, whether that's in his budget, which we all appreciate who work there, or it's in Georgia Best, which is a new program that we are having where our teachers are going to have the opportunity to get advanced degrees for no tuition. We're going to do about 500 teachers are going to have that opportunity this first year. It's employee-centric. If it's going to be the best place to teach, lead, and learn, we have to provide that support. Our superintendent says there are two kinds of people that work for the district, those that teach and those who support that teach. In academics, we are here to support and serve. So all of our planning and all of the things we do are to support and serve those most important people who are teaching in the classroom with our kids who are the learners. Simplifying the foundation. I think when you look at the work that we're going to share with you, you're going to see that. Our superintendent says to us all the time, no fads. We're not doing fads, right? And we all have been, if we've been in the classroom, we've seen them come and go. Some of them are good, but no fads. We're making changes. We're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We're making changes, but we're not just jumping on new things. We're really sticking what research tells us. And then last, that data. You have to make adjustments, and you can't do that if you're not monitoring that data in a purposeful and meaningful way. So just a little bit about Cobb. We are the second largest school district in the state and the 25th in the nation. There are almost 107,000 students in the district with 112 schools. You will see we have a charter school, a special education center, an adult education center. We have an early learning center, very wide variety. So when you're planning and you're keeping all of these things in mind, you're also planning for a very large district, and that scale is very important. And again, all aligning to the one team, one goal, student success. So I want to start by just kind of going over a couple of things that we're going to highlight today for you. That when we started in 2006, 2007 with the implementation, it was based on balanced instruction and early literacy framework. So we're going to talk about that initial work, but how that's evolved. Because again, if you want to sustain, you've got to be willing to make those changes. Coordinations of funds, let's be honest. A lot of the work we do depends on that funding. And we have had to be, we've got to be very strategic in how we do that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The science of reading success, how we have taken what we, as my assistant superintendent says all the time, when you know better, you do better. How have we done that? How have we added decodable books into that? And then the early literacy commitments and pathways. A lot of this work, as I said, very employee-centric, very value of the employees. And we have an incredible team that I want to introduce to you, starting with our English language arts people. Now, Liz Coby is the supervisor of English language arts for Cobb County, and she actually probably was still here in 2014. She was there doing this work. She is our sustainability master. Here we have her. But and she's joined by Beth Smith and Jen Shears, who are our learning support specialists. They do a ton of training. They are boots on the ground in the classrooms with the teachers doing that work. We also added an early literacy, early learning supervisor the year before we started our pre-K program. So Denise Osborne joins this team. They just do incredible work. And I think it's really purposeful, and they're never losing that passion for the classroom. We all have to remember with whatever we're doing, how does this look in the school? You got to remember what that like when you were that, teacher and you're walking in, you got your backpack and this is going on. And it's going to making sure that what we're doing still works at that classroom level. That's just so important. And I appreciate how well they do that. So next, I want to introduce my right hand and the most excellent assistant superintendent somebody could ask for. And here's our small world story. I love to share a story. So 107,000 students, right? Now, I went to Cobb County Schools, actually spent most of my career being a learner, a teacher, and a leader all at the same school. And my first year teaching, I had a next door neighbor who was a first year teacher. Well, now she works in the office right next to me. So Kelly and I were first year teachers together at McEachern High School. And I'm not going to tell you the year because it was too long ago to admit, but I have the distinct pleasure of working with her every single day, and it is fantastic. So Kelly, I'm going to let you share the next part.
Thank you. Yes, it is a very small world when you stay in the same district for so many years, then you do, but it has been a true pleasure. All right. So as Catherine said, I get to work with these fabulous people, just one of the many, but teaching and learning in Cobb and literacy. So it is been a long journey. This is nothing new for us that we have started. We have been on this path with the science of reading for a long time. And so as Catherine said, we're going to talk about some of these items here on the screen, but the first is our balanced literacy document. So this document, I was just out at a school. We were doing some literacy walks, Liz team on Wednesday, I think, at a high school. And once again, if I've seen this once, I've seen it with Liz probably 300 times or more. I feel she starts every session that she does with this document and references it. So this is a document that is very familiar to our teachers, to our leaders, and we have this for every content area in our district. And so it may look a little different, but the format's the same. And what are we really focusing on? So this document is 8 years old. It has come a long way, as we talked about, and it was really work it developed with teachers. So it wasn't just leaders taking those things, a look at it and saying, what do we think? We worked with teachers to come up with this. So the reading, the speaking and listening, the writing, right? That reading foundational skills. So these are all things that teachers see frequently. It is what has guided our work for about 8 years now. So when we talk about data, the superintendent, one of his priorities is looking at data to make decisions. And so as a district, when we looked at our data, we saw a need to impact literacy. And so along with this reading foundational skill, there was also an ELA adoption. All of this work was kind of going on at the time, about 8-10 years ago. We said, well, you know what, when we look at our data, we have some schools that are striving more than others. And so we really need to take a very intentional look at what is going on with those schools and with the reading instruction. So born from this, it's now called the Early Literacy Framework. It was the Early Literacy Initiative at the time for the first few years. And right, that is our why. We're committed to supporting schools with intentional, ongoing, and accelerated support for principals, for teachers, and paraprofessionals to work with all students, become proficient, fluent, and confident readers by the 3rd grade. So I think it's important to take a look at that principals, teachers, and paraprofessionals. And we have been very intentional with that work. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I do want to mention we have our own LMS, CTLS, the Cobb Teaching and Learning System. And so it is all aspects. It is parent, it is teach, it is learn, it is assess. Assess was the first leg of that system. And so these are some of the data reports, which you can't see, but you can see results of a school group by standard, then the single class by standard by student, results of a single class, correct, incorrect items for students. And this has evolved. It is such a powerful system that our teachers are able to use and our leaders. So comparison, single class score average, standard breakdown score by student. So all of those things. So when we talk about, let me go back. So when we talk about the early literacy framework, I do think it's important to talk about the monitoring of it, because we know that what gets monitored, right, gets done. And so we have a cycle that our early literacy framework schools go through. And so well, it's gotten a little bit less, but we were meeting there, I felt like every 2 to 3 weeks at one point when I first came on. And in those meetings, there are the principals of the early literacy framework schools. There are myself, the literacy team, the principals sometimes are joined by an AP or a coach if they're really trying to coach them up. The assistant superintendents in leadership division are also there that cover those schools. So we are all in a conversation and going through this data through these cycles. And so we work with our assessment division to really look to see and break down and really help us understand what's going on. We get to the student level. we look at the teacher and we have very honest conversations in these early literacy framework schools. And we're breaking it down by students saying, okay, I'm seeing that, you know, these students, we've gone through 3 cycles and they're not making improvement like we need to make. So what's going on with the student? We have special education representation in the room from the district, ESOL representation. It is a large group of people who can make things happen. And we do talk about what are those strategies? What is next for this either individual students, perhaps it's our ESOL students. They're just not making the progress that we need them to make. And so what are our next steps? And so from that, we as a district office then take steps to go and assist and support and make those recommendations. So it's a really powerful practice that I'm sure many of you are already doing, but it's very intentional. It's scheduled. We already have them scheduled for next year. And so everybody knows you show up, you know your data, you're ready to talk about your kids. And really the evolution of the principal in this and the training and support we give to them so that they understand what it means to be literate and how, because we all know we have different strengths when we come to. I could be a high school background person that ends up becoming an elementary principal. High school people aren't taught how to teach reading, right? So that has been a really powerful practice and support that I have seen personally grow the principals and what they're able to speak to. So our intentional steps in scaling. So I really like this graphic. As you look at where we were, 2016-17, we started this first cohort. We adopted K-2 resources, and we also established an early learning supervisor, right? Birth through 8 was to be the focus. And then we continued as we went through the years, adding other grade levels on. We then adopted, we did a 3-12. We adopted that a little different that next year. And then we started in 2018-19, we had enough interest from schools because this was a pretty intense commitment. When you were an early literacy framework school, it is a very big commitment on the part of the principal, the support team at the school, and the teachers, the training that's involved, the looking at data, those meetings, and having really open and honest conversations about your data can sometimes be painful, but we have created an environment where people feel comfortable saying, you know what, I don't know what to do. And so Liz, Jen, what's going on? What can you do to help me? So that's been really powerful. But because we can't support, we are just a certain number of people on a team and what we can do, but there were enough principal interests that we started a principal-led group. So while they were not a part of our meetings, they meet on their own. So we give them support and we do provide some training to them saying, hey guys, this is how it works. This is what it looks like. These are the assessments. The assessments are available. All of this work is available to every school in the district, every elementary school. So if they wanted to do it on their own, they could. And so we train those principals. So that's been another exciting part that the principals have now said, you know what, I hear great things about this. Well, I want to know what's going on. And even though I'm not going to be in a call with you every 2 to 3 weeks, I want to be a part. So we extended it that 1 year and then we expanded it in 2021. We said, okay, we've got you schools, you've made progress. We're happy with what's going on. We want to add another group of schools. So we expanded it. And now kind of we're 2021, 2022. We have added the Skilled Teachers Build Skilled Readers series, K-12. And so this is really a need that we see that we are trying to put a focus on. So not only in that early learning space, but also that 6-12 space, because we know we have students coming to us, whether they're from our own Cobb schools and we just haven't quite gotten them there, or we have a lot, you know, Atlanta's a great place to be. And so we have a lot of people that move in from around the country, around the world. And so when they come to us in Cobb, again, as a high school teacher, I was not taught how to read, and we are getting students who are significantly behind. And so we're working on that 6-12 space. So we've had great response. Last year, I'm really accelerating it this year. Skilled Teachers Build Skilled Readers. In 2021-22, we were awarded a grant. And that really, with this work that we're currently going on, because even before the pandemic, we saw a need. As we were looking at our data, we said, okay, we are making progress, but for the intentionality, the effort, the expense, what we're doing, we're not quite seeing what we need to see. We need to really take a deep look at our data and say, what is our next step? So we applied for a literacy grant. And I will tell you one of the things that we have done as a team at the district office, we put our supervisors through grant writing training. And we said, okay, we know that there's a finite amount of money coming in, but there's lots of grants. And so we did put our district people through a grant writing training. And so that is that expectation at the district office, is that we are applying for grants to move this work forward, or any work for any of our supervisors. So we got an award from the state of Georgia, a literacy grant. And from that, we have gone into the letters journey. And so we started that this year. 22-23 was our first cohort. We have, how many, Ashley? You're going to tell me. 192 was in that first cohort. We also, every principal. So we did use data to select schools and said, you are going to be a part of our first group of our letters journey. And principals were required to also be a part of that. So there's letters for leaders, which all of those principals are going through. District office staff, I'm proud to say that I finished mine. I have my certificate. So I was very proud of that. So we are working on that. So we now are about to launch our letters cohort 2 group. So we are scaling that. And so we also are going to end up with 50 facilitators when all is said and done around the district, who are going to be able to promote this work and lead this work with us. When you have a team of 4 or 5 people that are really leading this work, you have to figure out, how am I going to scale in a district the size of Cobb? And we have 67 elementary schools, very thriving schools, some striving schools. It runs the gamut, but how can we get better? Because even if you have schools who are very thriving, right? There's students, when you look at their data, it looks really good. Well, if you start doing a deeper dive, there are always going to be areas that you can work on. And if you do have students who are really, your students are thriving, right? They're doing well. What are you doing to push them and go even deeper and make them better? So we're working on that. We talk with our district, because you do have such a diverse district when you're big like Cobb. So we have some schools who receive Title I funding. So there's a lot of opportunities for schools to buy things. We have schools who have great foundations, donations from community businesses. So there's lots of opportunity in our district. Principals have a lot of autonomy. And so when we've started talking about the science of reading and letters, a lot of our schools had gone through Orton-Gillingham training. And so their messaging was like, well, how is this different? So now in our presentations with our leaders, with our teachers, we do talk about this, because I think it's important to address, right? Our early literacy framework, it's our systematic district process. Resources are available to everyone. The assessments are there. That is a very collaborative process within the district that we have created. Now this letters training. And so you really see it's the research and intensive professional learning. So if you're not familiar, letters is a 2-year commitment for teachers to go through. So it is very intense. And what we really liked about letters, it includes that bridge to practice, those case studies. And so that really, for us, getting in there and having those teachers go through it, and just as we're finishing up our first year with letters, and just the power that our teachers come back saying, oh my gosh, I never knew. I never realized that I needed to be doing this. And so that's been very powerful. And so we just talked to them about the differences between OG. REAP is another one that many of our schools have also chosen, that reading is essential for all people. And so for us, the letters really fit with that intentional, that bridge to practice. So that is kind of where we are with them. Coordinating funds. Okay. So, we are a very employee-centric district. So when I talked about grant writing training, that was very intentional, because we know we have a certain amount of Gen Fund money that is received, and that we are going to have to supplement our work. We need to go after different funds. So for us, coordinating funds, it is a big commitment when you're talking about letters training at a district that size, decodable books, those kinds of things. When we see, what do we need? How are we going to make this happen with the funds? So we didn't get $100 million. Like our friend Cliff over here. We wish, but we didn't. And so I just wanted to give you this visual. So grant funds. So Georgia, that's part of the DOE for the state of Georgia. So DOE funds, we've received several of those. Cobb County School District, the general fund, we have used some of our Gen Fund money. The American Rescue Plan, art funds, right, has been a fantastic, what a support to schools and to helping us really do the work that we need to do. But then also Title II, Title III, IDEA. So I think that really speaks to the relationships that you have within your district. because we know that sometimes people, these are my funds, and sometimes that relationship piece can be a bit, challenging. But I will say in our district, we have created wonderful relationships where you go and you speak to the special education assistant superintendent, right? And you say, this is what we're doing. This is what I need to do to support your students. It's going to make a difference in the teaching and the learning and what's going on. And yes, absolutely. Right. ESOL, this is what we're doing. Can you fund additional ESOL teachers to go through this training? Absolutely. So for us, speaking to those relationships within the district to coordinate all of these funds and to make it happen has been critical. All right, next I get to introduce the fabulous Dr. Ashley Kennedy. She is the Director of Instruction and Innovative Practice and leads the ELA team. Ashley.
Good morning. Is it still morning? Is it? I'm sitting here, when you're like with colleagues and you're just so incredibly proud. That's the moment I'm having, like taking notes. I'm such a learner, taking notes on our presentation. I'm Ashley Kennedy. As it was mentioned, I have been in the academic division for 9 years. I've served in a number of roles, and I am just very proud to serve as Director of Instruction and Innovative Practice. As Kelly mentioned, early learning and ELA are within my office. They represent 2 of 8 departments. I like to say when I talk to school leaders, we lead all things birth through post-secondary. And so I'm biased, but the Office of I&I is certainly my favorite. I am going to unpack our science of reading success and really start to get into what we've learned, what we're thinking, where we're in terms of where we're headed next, and how we have added decodable books into our journey to make it even more impactful for our teachers and our students. So we really have, and this is super high level, right? For the purpose of today, we've kind of drilled down to 4 big key areas that we want to share with you today in terms of what's really attributing to our success right now, which is going to support us with where we're headed next. And that's teacher pedagogy. So a focus intensely on that. Engaging our school leaders, right? All the research we know points us back to a strong instructional leader is a key indicator for school success, teacher success, a systematic plan, and then that monitor and support piece. Teacher pedagogy. Our goal was to introduce the science of reading and letters in a way that felt familiar for our stakeholders. The ELA did a brilliant job of saying, we're going to layer it. We're going to add a component to the bottom of our balanced document that really emphasizes this is about teacher practice. There's no kit coming. There's no bucket of books yet, right? We didn't know that yet. I'll get to that in a minute. But in terms of letters, right? When we introduced this, the first thought was, well, where are my resources? And our language has been, this is an investment in you. This is an investment in teacher practice. This is an investment in your disposition, how you show up to the small group table, how you conduct that explicit phonics lesson. So we simply have done just that. And I will say to you, all of the content that you're seeing from the team this morning, we use this to train our teachers. If you were sitting with us next week in a CCC meeting or with the team, you would see many of these slides. And we really wanted to be intentional with that today to say to you as district leaders, how clear is your messaging? How consistent is your messaging? We should all be able to take a session with leaders and use that same session with instructional paras, that same session with second grade teachers. That really is promoting that consistency and coherence as a district team. And then, of course, we've added the addition just to that student engagement and behaviors and outcomes, which is really what we're hoping to see. And we've started to see it, as Kelly mentioned, as we're wrapping up year 1 of letters with our teachers and all of their learning. We all know the research. We had a chance to talk about it yesterday and during our last symposium around teacher prep programs. And as a district, we're very proud that in terms of this, focusing on teacher pedagogy, that we're having conversations with our university partners. What's happening with your core syllabus? How are you preparing pre-service teachers? How are you responding to what we know is a significant gap? Second, engaging school leaders in this idea of a school team approach. As we know as adults and adult learners, when you hear this idea of something new is coming, I've been asked to participate in letters, what's the science of reading? What does this mean for me? You really want to connect people quickly. So we decided as a team, our letters journey would include a school team approach. have conversations with principals, tell them where we're headed, empower them, give them a sneak peek of where we're headed. Here's a big timeline we've created, and then we step by step unfolded it with teachers. That approach aligned to our district and our local school literacy goals. Right off the bat, our goal was to engage people, to create that excitement, right? Which is where that rapport is so important. And then we have built in reflection and action. I'll talk about that in just a moment. I wanted to give you an example of what that school team approach looks like. So for cohort 1, as Kelly mentioned, they're wrapping up year 1, and we're able to onboard additional teachers in cohort 1. So if you're a cohort 1 school, you'll have a team of about 10 or 11 engaging formally in the letters work, because our goal is to impact K2 vertical teams and to impact building. So going into next year, again, just an example from some recent content that we've delivered to schools, their team size is 5. So an assistant principal is joining, plus 4 additional teachers. So now you've got a principal, an assistant principal, and about 10 or so teachers who are formally engaging in the work. Cohort 2, which they'll soon receive their official welcome to the work, which we're very excited just about the interest and the momentum. We'll include a principal, teachers, and if a school has an instructional specialist, them as well. I want to point out here clarity. So something that we've learned on this journey and something that I feel has attributed to our success, we feel, is being crystal clear. When schools have autonomy, schools have choice. If we're not very clear on who should be involved, then you might just select someone, right? And maybe it's the right person, maybe it's not. And so in our schools who have instructional support specialists, essentially it's a allotment that's being used similar to like an academic coach. We've named it here. By the way, for those 6 teacher spots, if you have an instructional specialist, they should occupy 1. And I think we can all agree and understand why that is so important to do. Systematic plan. So when we decided to embark on our science of reading journey formally in terms of letters, right? We will be participating in this. District leaders are on board. I as well just wrapped up, feels really good. Our district supervisors are going through the teacher experience because we felt that that would be very valuable just in terms of their roles and how they serve. We decided we got to have some collective commitments. This is going to be complex. It's new. We're going to have something to point people back to on this journey as we're learning, as we're growing. Liz has said to me, teachers have used the expression, I'm mourning. I'm learning so much that I am in a mourning phase, right? Cliff, I think we heard you say that as well. And so we established these. The district team who wrote the grant, we sat down, talked about what we believe, what we want to see, and we established our 4 commitments. And this is what we're really using to kind of move us along. Each of these has about 3 to 4 actions that we've designed as an internal team that we're looking back to just to hold ourselves accountable. I want to focus on number 4, which will take us into our decodable book journey and success. I guess about midway through year 1, the team started hearing more and more, we need decodable books. Teachers are in the Teams chat learning so much. We need decodable books. This is great. I'm glad I'm a part of this. We need decodable books. And so it's like, oh, we need decodable books. So I point you to 4, and we drop the image here because this directly aligned to our goal to stay focused on teacher and student outcomes, right? We are learning, practices are shifting, and our teachers are responding to us and telling us what they need. Before I jump to the next slide, I do want to point this out. I think it's very important to say before we go into where we are with decodable books now, what we're hoping to see. We are a well-resourced district, maybe like your district, right? Lots of resources, lots of text. It was very important for us to communicate what do we have in our buildings and how are we using them? And are your teachers aware of when they should be used? And I would say that that's a topic for another presentation, right? This slide alone. And so the teams have done an outstanding job with explicitly laying out the different types of resources and text in our district, naming their use, going deep into the intended purpose to support teachers. I think my biggest takeaway as a district leader and experiencing letters is a teacher has got to be able to diagnose, right? And that's not always the case. And so if I'm not sure, I might just fall back on what I'm familiar with, right? And so just want to point this out before we move forward, because I feel that that has been very powerful and is certainly contributing to our success in terms of teacher confidence and self-efficacy. So, science of reading and decodable books. You heard me mention new knowledge, right? People are learning, lots of excitement, the team's out, they're walking. Teachers are talking about, you know, their case studies that are coming up. The team is learning, and we identify there's a need for more decodable books. Our current resource acquisition does include decodable books. Teachers certainly have access to decodable books, right? But we were thinking in terms of marrying what we're learning with the science of reading, the letters experience, to now the resource. So our goal was to look for the following characteristics in terms of quality decodable books. Books that build reading foundational skills, a resource where there was a progression of skills, right? Research-based, it's very thought out, high quality. Decodables that present complete ideas, events, and stories. I know we probably have all experienced decodables that really are like nonsense words or don't really make sense, and that can be very distracting for young readers. We wanted decodable books that were interactive and that were engaging for students and families. And who knew, right, that there was a decodable book that's just like that met all those characteristics. And so we obviously went through many steps that district leaders you're familiar with in terms of acquiring new resources. And we were introduced to Just Right Reader decodable books. And we decided for our approach, we really wanted to focus on this idea of pre-K through 5 libraries, so school libraries, but we also wanted to provide our kindergarten, first and second grade teachers who are engaging in the letters work right now, who are learning, right? New knowledge, shifting practice with those resources. And so that's where we started. And about mid-March, they were delivered. The team's smiling and laughing, lots of excitement, right? Shipments are coming in. And what we appreciate about Just Right Reader is before we, got to purchasing and ordering, we had this thought of like, there's so much excitement and, then the small things, right? You're like, well, are they in bins? Are they in a box? Do we need to, prepare for that? And as great partners, they created, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, kind of their first iteration of the bins and provided those to us as a school district, which saves a lot of time, right? Yeah, I see you clapping, Lynn. Lots of time. Lots of time for us. So I do want to go back again because I jumped to the visual, but essentially we have grade level libraries for our teachers, our K-2 teachers who are engaging, and then there is a school, that school-wide library. And we've spent time with our academic coaches to say, hey, here is how they should be used, right? We got about a month or so of school left. We want to ensure that that pre-K to 5th grade library impacts as many students as possible. So looking ahead, and when I started to unpack this slide and we ran through this as a team, I'm like, this really could be like 10 or 15 slides, but looking forward, and for the purposes of today, we kind of wanted to capture what's coming up next in terms of like next school year, right? When I picture the visual, the table that Kelly shared with you from 16 through now, I can picture from now to 2029, right? When I think about staying the course, having a consistent message, and being really rooted and grounding, and having that simplified approach, as Dr. Molina mentioned, in terms of our superintendent's second priority. So first up is to operationalize the science of reading collective commitments. This work is new to us in terms of the letters journey, right? We'll have 25 facilitators soon. They'll kick off their summer work and begin to prepare to facilitate to others, and 50 when we are complete with cohort 2, but really digging further into those 4 commitments that I shared with you to ensure that this, in fact, does become a part of our fabric, and we can point back to what's really different, but also what's being really impactful. The second, continue to invest in and elevate the early literacy framework. Beginning next month, this team will spend a lot of time with 12 educators in our district to enhance our framework. We've learned a lot. There's a lot that needs to be adjusted in terms of the lessons and the assessments. Feedback from others like this, it's very important for us in Cobb to engage and have constant conversations with a variety of literacy educators and advocates. So instructional rounds, real-time experiences. I will say bullet number 3, and this is really a nod to the team. Within the Office of I&I, my request or my expectation is that we spend a good bit of time in field. So I often say to the team, we do not lead this work by proxy. And so the best way for us to lead is to have that nice balance of what's happening on the ground with teachers and students right now. And then, of course, we have that dedicated time and space as district leaders to plan for that work. So I just point that out because it's really easy to trust, right? Your team comes to you, we need this. That credibility is higher when you know that you're working with a district team and district leaders who are spending that time in field. And that is something that I also model as well. The 4th scale and sustain letters work. So again, we'll have the 50 facilitators once we get cohort 2 on board, and then very excited about the secondary space. Want to tell you a little bit about that. In my head, the slide was there, so I'll just tell you about it because it's not there. The secondary literacy space, this summer, we have certainly been embarking and having conversations with middle and high school around the science of reading, but this will be our first kind of formal, dedicated institute for about 100 or so middle and high school literacy stakeholders. We are very excited about that. Again, directly led out of the ELA department, because we're hearing from them too, right? In a number of ways in terms of striving readers. But we really want to give nod and respect to the differences between early readers and adolescent, young adult readers, right? And so it's why we've dedicated that space. So I'm really excited about that. Wanted to give you this example of how we're embedding, if you're thinking as a district team or a district leader, that's this idea of staying the course, right? Always folding the work in, not necessarily sending the message that we're starting over or what we didn't work, right? And so you've heard a lot about the early literacy framework. This is an example, right? A slide we use with principals all the time around our current structure. So we meet in field, we have a meeting, we look at data, we go to classrooms. We talk about bright spots, we talk about next steps. So next year, where I've underlined theory and demonstration for you, anytime you're in an early literacy meeting, the team takes a moment to model a high yield strategy for you as a principal. So you feel it, you do it, you experience it. I've done the tap zap method, all the things. It's wonderful, right? It as adult learners, I've now experienced it. Now I'm better equipped to go look for it and get feedback. And so we're going to fold in the decodable book work next year, just to, again, to continue to elevate those conversations and support leaders with practices. I mentioned the facilitators to you. We're very excited. You might have noticed when Dr. Molina introduced the team, we are lean. We're a very lean district team. 3 individuals who support K-12 ELA for 112 schools. You've got 1 early learning department supervisor. And so we really rely on our teachers to continue the work and to really be those extensions of our department. So we're very excited about our letters facilitators. And that's really concludes our presentation. We put our kind of overview of what we've captured here as our closing slide in case there are any questions for us, Sarah.
But you kept going and it answered, like people were like, oh, I see it, I see it, I see it.
Perfect.
You know what's so beautiful about this? We were watching the numbers. Everyone who started with you continued, like you what I love about this is that, Fulton went first. Now Cobb sharing their story, the impact and people wanting to listen and hear from you. So Cobb County, like, congratulations on your work. Congratulations on this journey, right? You show that it can be done, right? A vision really matters, and even a small lean team can do something incredibly impactful for kids. And we feel just like maybe your partner, right? This is about partnership. Any other questions here or online? Any more, Terry? She literally, as I was sitting there, I went to put my mic on because you had questions all throughout. It was beautiful. We'll send you the questions if you want. Because they were asking questions and then seeing the slide and being like, oh, okay. They were on the journey with you. So thank you. And if anyone online has any further questions, we're going to send this out because it's really great for all of us to look back and just keep learning together. And you can always reach out to us at Just Right Reader at schools@justrightreader.com. All right, everyone, happy lunch.